Welcome back. It is Friday here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our great friends from the Wild Club, including Feast Market and Cellar, located right next door to Southern Stone. Feast offers a wide selection of wines with a sommelier on staff to help you with your pairings. Alec Lasley from the Hoosier.com joining us now to get us caught up on recruiting because it's going to be it's kind of coming to a big bang close, Alec. The AAU summer season, I guess you'd call it, is about to come to a gigantic July 4th type of closure here with all three circuits, the Under Armour circuit, the Adidas Gauntlet, and the Nike EYBL, all having their finals, championships type deals coming up. One's already started. Is the Peach Jam already started? No, it starts the 17th, right?
No, that's the last live period in July. So they have a couple more weeks before they get there. That's why this is kind of the last chance for a lot of these teams, at least when we're talking Peach Jam and Nike EYBL, to qualify for it. So a lot of teams came into yesterday either needing to go undefeated or needing to get a lot of wins to at least put themselves in position to get to Peach Jam. Guy like TJ Power, an Indiana guy, Indiana recruit, I should say, not Indiana guy, but Indiana recruit in the 2023 class. Really needed to win the majority of his games this week to get to Peach Jam. Lost their game last night, so it looks like he and BABC may be out of Peach Jam. We'll see, obviously, how things unfold. But if that is the case, he definitely put on a terrific in front of the Indiana staff, a guy who Indiana's obviously been pursuing very, very heavily over the last few months, in front of Mike Woodson and then Yazir Roseman. So, this is kind of that crucial weekend, not only for recruitments in terms of either getting new offers or kind of cutting down lists. A lot of guys like to make commitments here between now and Peach Jam. And this is kind of the one of those last events that college coaches can actually get on the road for, outside of the last weekend of the month coming up in July.
And I'm sure that they're probably happy about that, to be honest with you, because getting off the road is something that they enjoy, but also getting to spend time with your team, as now those guys are all together, and the most important thing to Mike Woodson or any head coach is your team now, because it's a new team. Every year, it's a new team. And so you have got to integrate parts. And that's one of the things that yesterday when I spoke to CJ Gunn about, integrating into that. And because he is, of the four freshmen, he's probably been talked about the third least. And he's coming from Indiana, but he's also been the longest committed. And you've got a couple of 5-stars that came in later. It's natural to get more attention, but he's the guy that I'm like, I don't want to say he could be the most important of those freshmen, but it could be very important, because if he can carry his shooting ability that he had in high school over to the collegiate game, he may end up finding more minutes than people think.
Yeah, and I think that we heard CJ Gunn talk about that yesterday, kind of stressing not only the need that Indiana has for shooting, but obviously the importance, that being kind of the key skill set that he brings to the floor, his ability to get shots kind of whenever he wants, but also that ability to be a spot up shooter that he was kind of earlier in his high school career, when those Lawrence North teams were pretty set in terms of shot creators and playmakers on the outside there. Especially when he did come off the bench. So he's played both roles. He's been able to be the go-to guy and kind of hunt his shots. He's also been the guy who's been in the corner and been a recipient of some of those kick-out passes that now Indiana is trying to do a lot more of, with kind of that dual point guard attack of Xavier Johnson and Jalen Hood-Schifino. So Seaton's not going to play, I don't believe, a ton of minutes his freshman season, but I think he's going to play potentially in some pivotal moments because of his ability to be a two-way player. He needs to bulk up a little bit to really see a lot of those minutes be sustained throughout the majority of a season, or really kind of find some part in the rotation consistently. But his ability at 6'5" on the wing to play multiple positions, to guard multiple positions, especially, is something that Mike Woodson's going to look for immediately. And we heard both CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks yesterday talk about not only the emphasis, obviously, that they've been putting on the defensive end, but that being the one area that both of them really need to improve on. And the ability to adjust to the college game, the speed, the strength, the quickness that a lot of these guys have, that I guess a lot of people don't really realize, even if you are playing at a prep type level on a high school when you come to college. But yeah, obviously his shooting is what stands out. We'll see, how that translates. Obviously, he's a guy who's been a great shooter for the majority of his high school career, and he's a guy who has that skill set that very few people on the Indiana roster have. So as long as I think he can continue to progress on the defensive end of the floor, that's going to be where he sees his minutes. And then if he knocks down those shots that he does get and that he should get, especially with kind of more of those playmakers on the offensive end, then I think that's where he sustains those minutes and plays a lot more consistently. But at the end of the day, regardless of if he's hitting shots or not, I think it starts on the defensive end of the floor with him.
And it's easy for Indiana fans to get excited. I understand, because you don't see what's going on. None of us do, not even us in the media. We don't see what's going on inside the walls of Cook Hall, actually on the court. But as far as depth, man, this should be a pretty deep team. But by depth, that doesn't mean you've got 10 guys that can start. Now, depth doesn't mean you have 10 guys that can start, but 10 guys that can play. And there's a difference. Starting and playing, you got guys that can come off the bench, that can give you something. And I cannot imagine that they're not there. They're, if not super close to being at that deep. Malik Renaud, I cannot imagine that he's not going to be able to contribute somewhat immediately. I'm expecting Jalen Hood-Schifino to start. I just love the confidence of CJ Gunn. I can't imagine if his shooting can come around, you're not going to keep him on the bench. The one unknown is Caleb Banks. Just because I haven't seen him enough and seeing him with those guys, but in listening to him yesterday, he's at the 3, and that's a great spot for him, because that's one of the places where Indiana that's lacking most, I guess you would say. The 3 and the 4, I guess. We'll have to get Alec to drop out and jump back in here. I think he's his connection froze up, but yeah, Caleb Banks is at the 3 spot, and that's the most unsecure place that Indiana has. Miller Kopp is going to start there. I promise you. Unless somebody comes in and just knocks him out, there's no way that I see Mike Woodson not starting Miller Kopp. I mean, he's always gone for seniority, that experience. And I've talked before that maybe there's a little less pressure on Miller Kopp this year to perform. He came in last year and everybody thought he was going to be the guy because they needed a shooter so bad. And well, that pressure is relieved this year because everybody's talking about Jalen Hood-Schifino and CJ Gunn and Malik Renaud and those guys. So maybe that helps Miller Kopp. And maybe he does a little less, but performs a little more, produces a little more. That would be outstanding for Indiana and a great addition to what they have going. We'll get Alec back on here in a second as soon as he rejoins us. But that's what I'm expecting. But it's just that we don't know Jordan Geronimo. How is he going to improve? Oh, they lost power. Or Alec lost power. He'll be back with us in a second. How's Jordan Geronimo going to improve on his offensive game? And it's not that I don't think defense is important. To me, defense is a given. You have to play defense or you're not on the floor. That's why I'm not ignoring it. It's just a given to me. You got to be playing defense. I made coffee and left it. I can't believe that. But I'm looking forward to this sophomore season of Woody's team. Alec back with us now. I forget what we were talking about with.
The main thing, because we were talking about depth there and kind of going deep into the rotation and what Mike Woodson can do. I mean, the biggest thing, obviously, he stressed a lot last year that he wanted to get to 9-10 deep. He just wasn't there yet with his guys. He didn't get that consistent production. I don't think you're going to see Indiana. That's really, really difficult to do in the college game consistently when you have such a strong kind of top 6-7 guys, especially for Indiana this season when you're talking about their kind of roster breakdown. You're going to have Caleb Banks, you're going to have CJ Gunn kind of at the back into that rotation, potentially Anthony Leal. But if you look at kind of a couple guys right off the bench, you're going to have Malik Renault, you're going to have Trey Galloway, you're going to have Jordan Geronimo that are going to play and see significant minutes, right kind of the first couple guys off of the bench there. Who's going to consistently show up from game to game at the back half of that rotation, because you're going to get guys in foul trouble. That's always the case. There's probably going to be a few injuries throughout the course of the season where some of these guys may need to play bigger minutes. For Indiana, I think the biggest thing that they haven't had in so long is just that talent in the rotation to practice against every single day. And so even if they're not playing every single game or playing, 10, 15 minutes every game, they're going against these guys in practice and they're pushing the starting unit or even those, 6th, 7th, and 8th guys off of the bench there in the rotation to play better. And that's what you need from a winning team. It's not always the guys who are on the court that are the ones pushing them in practice. It's those guys who are fighting for those and scrapping for those few extra minutes per game that you could potentially get at the back end of that rotation that tend to make a championship team. Because if you're, we heard Trace Jackson Davis talk about this even last year with some of the new pieces that they brought in, just the competitive nature that practice was, some of the bigger bodies that he was going against in practice that he didn't have in the first couple seasons of his Indiana career. And now you look at what that front court is and going up against now a very veteran lineup in Race Thompson, a guy in Jordan Geronimo who has really proven himself towards the back half of last year, who's really looking for a big jump, and then a 5-star freshman who's coming in to prove himself. And obviously that's just the front court, and we haven't even kind of begun to discuss the backcourt and the jumps that people are kind of raving about when it comes to Tamar Bates and what his role could potentially look like, and everything like that. So I think it starts in practice, and it starts with the CJ Guns, the Anthony Leals, the Caleb Banks, even to a certain extent the Tamar Bates, just because he hasn't played consistent minutes throughout his first season, to push those guys who know are going to play 25 plus minutes a game each game.
And last year, George Geronimo, he's a big question mark. His offensive game, and I think this season is huge for him. He has to make a move offensively this year, in my opinion. And then you have to ask yourself, what's going on with Logan Duncan? Is he getting lost, or is he just a slower developer?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter there. I mean, he's a
Oh,
year young for his
and I
grade.
don't and I don't mean that just because that sounded kind of that's negative towards him. I didn't mean that negatively, because you have to acknowledge that they brought in Malik Renault and you've got Trace Jackson Davis come back and raced here and all that. So it's not like that. I don't know that and don't see that. I do.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I think a lot of people do just kind of say that and don't fully understand. Obviously, not everyone coming in, whether they're a 4-star or not, is going to be a star player and are going to be star players right away. This was a much, even when Archie Miller got involved with Logan Duncan and wanted him to obviously come to Indiana, this was a much longer term development, even for an Archie Miller roster, than it was for coming in and playing immediately. A year younger, needed to put on a lot of weight, needed to get a lot more physical to play in the Big Ten. He's really worked on his shooting ability. He showcased that a little bit towards the end of his senior year, the ability to kind of step out and hit kind of 15 to 20 footers. Wouldn't say consistently, but has definitely shown an expanded range when it comes to his shot. And I think you're going to see him a lot more, at least on the offensive end, be more of that stretch forward unless he does put on, another 20 pounds, which I don't see happening. He's a very long, lanky guy. He has some good athleticism there that I think is really going to translate to the defensive end of the floor, especially when it becomes to protecting the rim and creating some easy transition buckets with his ability to pass. But if you're looking at Logan Duncan to even this year, next year, whatever it may be, to average 14 and 10 a game, that I don't foresee that happening. I think he's going to be a very, very solid piece to the puzzle, just like some other players are when they come to Indiana. A guy like a Gabe Cupps, who's never, in my mind, going to be a huge scorer, but he's going to be the perfect fit when you look at what Mike Woodson's trying to do with the roster, and that's put really, really smart players on the floor who are two-way players, and then surround them with really, really good talent, and then that just elevates everyone. And that's what you would get with both of those guys on the floor there. Obviously, kind of throwing in Gabe Cupps, but when you look at Logan Duncan, a guy, much longer-term project, but has the ability to add value in different spots that Mike Woodson really, really likes.